I think we should do another warm-up, but we want Bill. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your United States Senator Barbara Mikulski and your 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton!
Hi, everybody! Hi! Hi, everybody! Hi, everybody! First of all, let me tell President Clinton about where he is. He is at the Battle Grove Democratic Club, the Democratic Club that's got the most spunk, the most spirit, is the sassiest Democratic Club. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm supposed to introduce President Bill Clinton. If we could all just be a little quiet now for a minute. The president is going to speak, and what will be at Johnny O, he's like Dutch. They got to keep talking. First of all, the president should know that our congressman and our good friend, Dutch Ruppersberger, is recovering from back surgery, but he is working the phones for Hillary. He's working the phone for the Democrats. We have to make sure. Mr. President, it is here at Battle Grove that we won the American Revolution of 1812. And it is here at Battle Grove that we're going to win the Hillary Revolution of 2008. But enough from me. Let me give you the president we love. The president who did more for America in 8 years. The president that you need.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the Baltimore County Council Chair, Johnny O, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for supporting Hillary. Gary Mongan, the president of Battle Grove Democratic Club, thank you. Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger, I love that guy, and I'm sorry he's had surgery, so you got to get some more votes for Hillary to make it worthwhile for him to recuperate, so he'll have a president to come out healthy for her. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, for being a great lieutenant governor, a great friend of Hillary's. Thank you, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, for your strong support. And the governor's on his way. I want to thank him before he gets here. And most of all, thank you, Barbara Mikulski, for everything you have done. Let me begin by thanking all of you, first for giving me the chance to serve as president.
for 2 terms. Thank you. I look out here in this crowd. I was outside taking pictures with all the kids in the neighborhood and talking to the folks that couldn't get in. Oh, we'll talk tomorrow. And I was thinking, you know, these are the people that are the heart and soul of Hillary's campaign. People that live in cities and small towns and suburbs and rural areas. In Arkansas, where Hillary is well known, she got 70% of the vote in the Democratic primary. In Missouri, a state right next door to Illinois, where the whole political establishment was against her, she carried 109 of the 115 counties because there are people like you. And she won in California, in New Jersey, in Massachusetts. A big victory. Primaries are good for Hillary. The caucuses tend to be dominated by upper income Democrats and younger people who have more free time. It's true. In Washington State the other night, there was a poll showing her ahead in the popular opinion of the Democrats, but she lost the caucuses, and on that very day, the American Nurses Association endorsed her. First time they ever done it. And she had 6 nurses with her, and every one of them said, "I'm really sorry I can't go caucus for you. I have to work for a living." The people who work for a living need Hillary to be their next president. This country has been run by ideological extremists and economic elitists for too long. They took us from a big surplus to a huge deficit. They have to borrow money every day to cover the tax cuts of wealthy people like me. I love saying that. Because I had the lowest net worth of any president in the 20th century. Our family knows what your family's life is like, and she will fight for you in the White House. For the last 7 years, after median, that's the one in the middle, median family income rose $6,000. In our presidency, it's dropped $1,000 after inflation now. Health care premiums went from $6,000 a family to $12,000 a family. The cost of a college education has been priced out of sight, and they cut back on a lot of vital college aid. And now we got this home mortgage crisis scaring everybody all over the country. 1 million working families could be thrown out of their homes for doing nothing wrong. If you got a home mortgage, you know what question you ask yourself before you sign, don't you? Can I make the monthly payment? Isn't that it? That's the only question working families ask themselves. Okay, so now we're going to throw 1 million working families on the street who never missed a monthly payment. Why? Because when these mortgages were issued, the housing market was the only thing that was growing in the American economy in this decade. Looked like a good deal. So then all the people that issued the mortgages, unbeknownst to the people that signed them, packaged them up and in effect turned them into stock. And people bid on them. So when the housing boom ended and the American economy started going downhill, investors bid the stock down. You'd have probably done the same thing if you had any stock. You get out of a bad stock and go into a good one. What happened? They unwrapped all the stocks, sent the mortgages back to the companies that issued them and said, now, you're broke. You got to go back to the homeowners and get more money. Except the homeowners don't have any more money to give. Why did they sign the mortgage in the first place? Because they could make the monthly payment. Now, this is a test of presidential leadership. The president's proposed to do too little. It looks like they'll help a few people, and a huge number will be thrown out on the street. And of all the people left in the presidential race, Hillary has the most aggressive stance. She is the only person who has said, for these working families, who come from all races and backgrounds all across the country, freeze the foreclosures for 90 days, look at every one of these mortgages, and everybody who is making their payments, tell them they'll make the same exact payment every month for the next 5 years. Do not let them be thrown on the street. That's what you need a president for. What she wants to do is to rebuild the middle class in this country and give poor people a chance to work their way into it. Now look what's happened in the last 5 years, 7 years, as opposed to the previous 8 years. In our 8 years, we had 22.7 million new jobs, and almost 8 million people worked themselves out of poverty into the middle class. In this 7 years, you want to know why nobody's gotten a raise? Because we've only had 5 million new jobs, and 5 million people have fallen from the middle class back into poverty. And there are lots of reasons. One of them is health care. Okay. Raise your hand if you know somebody without health insurance. Look at this. Look at this crowd.
Terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's terrible, and it's everywhere. I was at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, where they had that horrible shooting, you remember? And I met with the victims' families, and then I went out and talked to 3,000 students, and about as many people, percentage-wise, raised their hands. Now, this is the only rich country in the world where you could get a response like that to a question like that. As a matter of fact, this is the only wealthy country in the world where anybody could even ask the question, because everybody else has found a way to provide affordable health insurance to all their people, and it costs at least $700 billion a year less. Now think about that. If we took any other country's healthcare system, Germany, Japan, you name it, and dropped it into America, it would cover everybody, get us better health outcomes, and cost $700 billion less. That is the size of the American trade deficit. So, here's the second reason you ought to be for Hillary. She is tired of making excuses for why we can't do this, and if you vote for her, she will give the American people a plan that will provide affordable health care for every last man, woman, and child in this country. And it is high time we did it. And guess what? The Democrats have been trying to do this since Harry Truman was president. And all of us have failed. All of us had tried. Harry Truman tried. He was a great president, nearly destroyed his presidency. Jimmy Carter tried and couldn't do it. We got further than anybody else. At least we got a bill out of committee, and it nearly wrecked us. But what's the difference this time? What is the difference? This time you have business, big and small, with the labor unions for universal coverage. This time you have doctors all over the country with the nurses and the hospital administrators for universal coverage. I don't know how many doctors have come up to me and said, I'm not going to be able to practice medicine anymore unless we cover everybody and quit wasting so much money. 30% of every dollar you spend on health care goes to paperwork, because we have let the insurance company tail wag the health care dog. And so here's Hillary's plan. If you like what you've got, keep it. If you don't like it or you don't have it, you can buy into the same plan that insures members of Congress and their families and federal employees and their families. And you can design a plan. There are lots of choices. If your family needs mental health coverage, you can get that. If you got a bunch of kids and you need dental health coverage, you can get that. You can get what you need. And if you don't have any children, you might want to buy into the third choice, which is a plan just like Medicare, which will be a little less expensive, but it'll be good for people if they don't have kids and they have simple, basic needs. Now, if you cannot afford this policy, your income costs will be capped at a small percent of your income, less than $12,000 a family, I'll tell you that. So if you can't afford it, you can get a tax credit to make sure you can pay the premium, because your costs out of pocket are not going to go above a small percentage of your income. If you're a small business person and you want to help your employees, but you couldn't afford it, you too can get tax credits. How are we going to pay for it? We're going to pay for it by letting the tax cuts on the richest 1% of Americans expire. And not because the American people resent financial success, that keeps the free enterprise system going, but because the American people resent it when we don't all pay our fair share. And we're not now. And the second thing we're going to do is to save money and improve health care by cutting out a lot of these excessive costs. I'll just give you one example. One. I got a lot of them, but I'll give you one. How many times have you been to another doctor, and before you can get an aspirin You got to sit there for an hour and answer the same questions about your medical history you've been answering since you were 12 years old, right? Isn't that right? Now, the young people here need to know this. There will come a time when you don't remember the answers anymore. But you still got to give those answers or he can't give you an aspirin, much less take care of you. Okay, if we all had electronic medical records with privacy protections, you'd save all that money. You'd save all those unnecessary tests that they still do on you because they're afraid your answers aren't good. And you'd save all the money you have to pay because we make a lot of mistakes still. And just think about that. The least it would save, I've seen all the estimates, is $80 billion a year. Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like to have affordable health care for every family in this country? Okay, now, of all the people still running in both parties, there is only one candidate that will give universal affordable health care to every American, and that's Hillary. And that's why the nation's endorsed it. Wouldn't you like it if every family could afford to send their kids to college? And if every kid knew that they didn't have to drop out because they couldn't afford one more loan? Here's her plan. Raise the Pell Grants every year to keep up with inflation. Raise the tuition tax credit, the Hope Scholarship tax credit, from $1,650 a year to $3,500 a year. Give our young people more chances to earn money through college through the AmeriCorps service program. Crack down on the abusive practices of these private student loan companies that are gigging these kids and charging them too much money. Hillary and I didn't have any money when we went to school. We had to borrow money to get out of law school. We could borrow it from the federal government for 2%. So she wants to do two things. Number one, make sure you can borrow money at a lower cost. And number two, let you pay it back as a percentage of your income, a small percentage of your income. Just last year, with Senator Mikulski's Just last year, with Barbara Strong's support, it's on now? Yo. Just last year, with Barbara Strong's support, Hillary co-sponsored a bill that allows young people to choose right now to pay their loans back as a percentage of their income. Now, when we did that before, the kids saved money and the taxpayers saved money because once young people knew they never had to drop out of school for fear of borrowing money, or they got out of school and found out they couldn't pay their loan, everybody paid their loan back. So the government wasn't out any money for loan guarantees. This is crazy we're not doing this. She also wants to do one more thing. She wants to say to all the young people here and around the country, if you get out of college and you become a teacher, a police officer, a fireman, a nurse, a mental health worker, your service itself will pay that loan back. Every year you serve, you write your loan off. She's got a plan that will create jobs in every community in this country and jobs that cannot be outsourced. Building a clean, efficient, independent energy future. Aren't you tired of sending $300 billion a year overseas to these oil sellers that we could be sending here at home? You think about it. Changing the way we use energy not only fights global warming and improves our national security, it is the only thing we can do that is guaranteed to produce jobs in every rural area, every small town, every suburb, and every city in America. You can grow biofuels from anything in rural areas. You can shut down every urban landfill and use all the material in it to create fuel or burn electricity. Generate your own electricity. And her plan would run transmission lines to every place we do that. You can build cars in America that use electricity and gasoline or biofuels that'll soon get 100 miles a gallon. And once we get to 100 miles a gallon, you won't care what they charge for oil because we won't be buying it anymore. And you think about it. Just look around the neighborhood. When you walk out tonight, you think this. Every school, every government building, every hospital, every auditorium, eventually every home in America could be made more energy efficient. And I do this all around the world now, so I know what I'm talking about. We got a big project in New York making all the public housing in New York more energy efficient. We're going to cut the utility bills from $500 million a year to $350. We're going to create a huge number of jobs, and not just for college graduates like electrical engineers and architects, but for high school dropouts that can be trained as green-collar workers. And just think about it. If you retrofitted this building here and you cut the utility usage 30%, you can pay it all off, the loan, to make all these changes, which lower utility bills. You just take the savings, and that's all you do. So it doesn't cost you any more money. Then when you pay the loan off, you got a lower power bill for life. And you created all these jobs. And unlike a lot of American jobs, you cannot outsource these jobs. Somebody's got to be here working on this building right here, not somewhere else. You cannot do it. So, she got the best plan for education, the best plan for health care, the best plan for jobs, and the best plan for handling this mortgage mess and keeping it from getting worse. That's the only way we can start growing America together again. And these are serious economic times. If anything, the times now are more trouble than they were when I became president. But I'll tell you this, if you elect her president and her jobs plan, her health care plan, and her education plan passes, and we stop this home mortgage meltdown, I believe we'll have more jobs and higher incomes in the next 8 years than we did in the 8 years when I served. If you want that, you vote for her for president. Now, we got another big problem, which is more than half the world's mad at us. You've probably noticed that. Part of it is about Iraq, and we do have to bring our soldiers home as quick as we can for all kinds of reasons. And I imagine you got a lot of people in this area that have served in the military, so you probably know this, but there are 3 reasons we have to do this. Look, nobody wants Iraq to fail. I want them to succeed. We want them to stay together. But our young people have done everything we've asked them to do. They got rid of Saddam. They gave them time to have a constitution. They had an election. They've had years now, longer than we were in World War II, to run their government and have their police and soldiers trained, right? And all that. What's the hang-up now? The hang-up is the government hasn't made the necessary compromises to figure out how to split the oil money and how to share the political power to hold the country together. Because it's hard. Long as they think we're going to stay there forever, they never have to make those compromises. As Senator McCain said the other day, we could stay 100 years. We could, but it's just like if your neighbor's house burns down, you take your neighbor in. And if your neighbor had no money, you'd let them stay for a month, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year. But if your neighbor's still there 5 years from now, that ought to tell you something. Isn't that right? That's what's going on here. So that's the first reason. This is not good for them. Second reason is our military has nearly been broken by these deployments. We have used up our ground forces. The Commandant of the Marine Corps said last week he would love to send 3,500 more troops to Afghanistan to go after the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Those are the people that did 9/11. Those are the people that murdered Americans, and they've killed a lot of other people. He would love to save a moderate Muslim democracy that even the UN, everybody in the world wants to save. But he said, I can't leave them there unless you let me bring some people out of Iraq. I cannot do it. Folks, we are training Navy reservists and regular Navy personnel in Army infantry tactics, and we are deploying them to the Iraq theater because we have no ground forces left. We've just about broken our military. Hillary's on the Armed Services Committee and has the support of a very large number of former generals and admirals who don't agree with our policy in Iraq but do agree we need a strong military. If you let her be president, she will repair our military and make it what ought to be and stop abusing our men and women in uniform. And the third, so we got to do it for the Iraqis because of the Al-Qaeda threat and because of our own military. We got to do that. But that's not the only reason people are mad at us. They're mad at us because we got out of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. that every president since Dwight Eisenhower supported. George Bush took us out after I was the first world leader to sign it, because we got out of the world's fight against global warming when it was our meal ticket to a better, brighter economic future. And our children and grandchildren's future depends on it. Because we stopped observing the Geneva Convention on Human Rights of people captured and protected against torture when our own military leaders were begging us to do it so that we could protect our own men and women in uniform if they got captured. I mean, just right down the line, people thought America's been telling them it's our way or the highway. So if you elect Hillary, you'll get a very different take. She will tell the world this: America is back. America is back. And from now on, we're going to cooperate with you whenever we can and act alone only when we have to, not the other way around. From now on, we're going to have diplomacy with friend and foe alike whenever we can, and military force will be used only as an absolute last resort, not the other way around. That's the American way. Now, all this is real important. She's got the best ideas. She's got the best programs. She's also got the best ability to make them come alive. I've loved listening to Barbara Mikulski talk about the work that they've done together in the Senate. But you know, it really matters whether you can actually do the things you talk about in campaigns. That's why the Constitution refers to the president as the chief executive officer. Not because the president's supposed to run some department, but because the president and the president alone is responsible for seeing that the good intentions expressed in campaign speeches turn into real changes in your lives. And she is a world-class genius at doing that. You know, as long as I've known her, I mean, we were in law school and other kids were dying to get out. She took another year to try to find some way to give greater protection to children who were the victims of severe abuse and neglect. And she did it. And the work she and her young friends did then is now reflected in the laws of virtually every state in this country. When she got out of law school, she didn't go for the big bucks. She took a small bucks job with the Children's Defense Fund and knocked on the door of poor people's houses to find out how come their kids were dropping out of school so often. And she learned way back then that it was because most of them had a mental or physical disability, usually quite a minor one. But back then, our schools were not trained to deal with these kids. The report that she and her young friends filed went to Congress and became the basis on which the Congress passed the landmark special education law that says all our kids, all of them, are entitled to an equal and appropriate public education. It changed the future for millions of people. When she was in the White House and we got beat on health care, she went back to work and helped to pass the Children's Health Insurance Program, which gives 6 million children in America, working people's children, health insurance. And she and Senator Mikulski have been fighting to make it 10 million kids, and President Bush has vetoed the bill twice because he said these kids are not poor. That's the whole point. You want their families to go to the poorhouse because they can't take care of their kids? That's why you need a new president and why she'd be a good one. And finally, she represented you in 82 other countries when I was president. This is called Dundalk, this town. We got any Irish people here? You know where Dundalk, Ireland is? It's in the Irish Republic almost to the Northern Ireland border. It was one of the hotbeds of IRA violence when all that killing was going on over there in the Irish Civil War. Went on for 30 years, the longest civil conflict in modern European history. Now, we got a peace agreement in 1998, one of the proudest achievements of my administration. But I can say this because my people are from County Fermanagh, and they were right on the line. So I was intermarried with the Protestants and the Catholics. I was biologically prepared for the peace in Northern Ireland. But it took them 9 years to implement all the provisions. So couple months ago, in late 2007, the new leaders of the Northern Ireland government came to the United States to thank America for helping them every step of the way. Now, they went to the White House and saw the president, and they asked to see one other person. They asked to see Hillary, to thank her for the independent role she played in making the peace in Northern Ireland. And finally, I just want to say a word about her work in the Senate. With Republican co-sponsors, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, she passed the following bills. A bill to get body armor to our troops quicker, which the White House opposed. A bill to say that if somebody from Maryland, the National Guard or Reserves, goes overseas and gets hurt, when they come home for life, they are entitled to exactly the same health care that regular military personnel get. A bill to give their families the family and medical leave law, so they can take some time off to take care of their loved ones without losing their job. And lots of other legislation, and legislation to protect the firemen and policemen from our state, New York, who were hurt after 9/11. When the president didn't want to do it. The president didn't want to. The White House and the EPA were saying, now these firemen and police officers, there is no way in the world they can get sick from what they breathed after 9/11. So they don't need any help with emergency diagnosis and care. You remember what was in the air in those pictures? What you saw in the air was asbestos, PCBs, and benzene, 3 well-known cancer-causing agents. Your government did not want to help those people. So here's the story I'll tell you. I'll just wrap this up with this story, because this is why she ought to be president. This is why she ought to be president. It's not just a question of having the ability to lead and make changes. It's not just a question of having the right vision and having the right plans. It's a question of having the right heart. So I want to tell you this story. Last summer, these 3 friends, this guy I know out west that I went to college with called me and said, Bill, I'm coming to New York on business with 2 of my friends, and when we get done, we want to go play that fancy golf course old Donald Trump built. And he said, I looked at the map, it's only 10 minutes from your house. Now, you used to be president. Surely you can get me on this golf course. So I said to him, I said, yeah, and the most important thing you said was used to be. I will take you. So I take these guys to the golf course, right? And I get them a caddy because it's a hard course. And we play the first hole. And they walk off the green. I still almost not talk about this. And for the only time in my life, a caddy grabbed me by the arm and wouldn't let me leave. This guy grabbed me and he said, wait, don't go. I want to tell you something. I said, okay. He said, you don't know me, do you? I said, I don't think so. He said, that's because I'm not really a caddy. So I thought, I got a comedian, a terrorist? What is this guy? And the guy got real serious and he said, no. He said, I do this to supplement my family's income. But in my real life, I'm a fireman, a captain in the New York City Fire Department. He said, you know, my father was an Irish immigrant butcher on Staten Island. And before 9/11, frankly, most of us thought we were Republicans. He said we already had what we needed from the government. We already had a good job, good health care, good retirement. What do we care? He said, we just liked all that tough macho rhetoric they put out. The guy was real up front. I liked him. He said, you know, we just liked the way they talked. He said, but on that awful day, when we were dodging all the falling remains of the Twin Towers, trying to find somebody alive, and the days afterward, we were crawling through that rubble, just trying to find human remains so people could identify their loved ones and have some closure. He said, your wife, our senator, was the first person who knew that a lot of us would get sick and some would die because of what we breathed. And he said, then the president most of us voted for, even the EPA said we couldn't get sick. But she knew better and she fought for us. And because some people in the House stood with her, we got the help we needed. And he said, some of us who would have died are alive. And those who died, at least their families have the dignity of knowing that at a terrible moment in this country's history, the United States Congress recognized and honored their service. And this guy said to me, by now I'm crying like a baby. I'm sitting there on the green, I don't know what to say. He said to me, I don't know what I think about politics anymore. But I know this, that's the kind of person who ought to be president. Somebody who knows what it's like to be me. And every other person, doesn't matter where we live, what color we are, anything about us, every other person that feels ignored and invisible and overlooked. And he said, I would do anything I could to elect her. Now, we don't hear enough talk about this kind of stuff in this election. Yeah, it's about your positions on the issues, and hers are way better than anybody else left running. Yes, it's about whether you can get stuff done with Democrats and Republicans, because we can't pass it unless we do. And her record on that is way better than anybody else you can vote for. But it's also about why the working people of this country have rallied to her, because they are beginning to see what I have known for more than 35 years. The other day, when she won such great victories in New York and New Jersey and California and Arizona and Arkansas, Tennessee and Oklahoma and in Massachusetts, when she won those victories, and then it came out that she was being badly outspent and the campaign was out of money, within 3 days, over 100,000 people had given her almost $10 million over the internet. Working people like you. People without a lot of money. People for whom it was a real stretch to send $20 or $25 or $30 because they're getting it now. So I'm asking you this, not for her, but for you. There's only thing that really matters when you're president, when you cut out all the smoke and mirrors and fluff, is this. This is all that matters. Are the American people better off when you quit than when you started? Do our children and grandchildren have a brighter future? And is the world coming together instead of being torn apart? If those are your tests, I promise you, if you make her president, you'll be able to say yes, yes, yes to those tests. I think she's the best candidate for president I ever had a chance to vote for. Please elect her on Tuesday, and God bless you. Thank you.